I'm Kristin Rankin,
I'm Uncle Nat.
and we're talking about
Other people's
other
hair.
people's hair.
All right.
Hey, Nat,
Hey, Kristin.
how's it going?
Great. We're doing a podcast. I have auto Zoom here, so enjoy the
I
show.
know. I was just like checking out your auto Zoom. It's just going to keep doing this.
I love it. Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of fun.
Um, so this is our first podcast of Other People's
It,
Hair.
it is. This is our first episode of our podcast that we're launching called Other People's Hair. Um, my name is Kristin Rankin, and I am the founder of a not-for-profit called the Dress Code Project, where we help hairstylists and hair salon owners create gender-affirming hair spaces so that folks that identify within the queer community can get haircuts that affirm their gender and make them look the way they feel. I'm also a hairstylist.
Yes, you are. You did my hair.
I sure did.
And I'm Uncle Nat, and I have a shop in Brooklyn called Uncle Nat's. We are a gender affirming, fat glorifying, trauma disability aware, and POC focused space that removes hair from faces and bodies using sugar paste and laser hair removal. And we also care for skin because that's also a part of the thing. And we work a lot with folks going through transition like myself, hormonally, surgically, purely look wise, like wherever you're at in your transition, you're probably going to find a resource here at Uncle Nat's. And I created the one Brazilian for one price, all genders and all genitals. So I'm the place where you do not have to announce your genitals to get a Brazilian.
You just did a little tiny thing there, just a small thing. No big
Bibbidi
deal.
bop.
Yep. Yep.
Just a little
Boom.
shop.
Done. Yeah, that could be our next jingle.
Bibbidi bop, a little shop.
A little shop. Nat, before we do get started, can I ask you what pronouns you prefer?
Yes, thank you for asking, Kristin. My pronouns are they, them, and yours.
Mine are also they, them. Thank you so much for asking.
Right on.
So, Nat, what is Other People's Hair podcast? What is this all about?
Well, first of all, thank you for naming it.
You're welcome. I know because you hate naming things. That's a thing for you. You don't like
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I have a background in music. I've been in a lot of bands, and my idea of Sisyphus rolling the boulder up the mountain for eternity is to be locked in a room with one of those little memo books and having to come up with names.
Right. Like it would just be torture for you.
Absolutely. So thank you. You're the best.
Like, yeah, no problem. It's like being in an escape room without any clues.
Yes. Literally.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think Other People's Hair was something that you had really wanted to do for a really long time, right?
Yeah, it's true. Being a hairstylist, we're hairstylists, you're a hair curator and you're a hair designer and sculptor and all those things as well. And we are also like artistic people and we're creative people. But ultimately, if you do work in a space where you're offering services to clients, you're in a customer service based industry. And I was just getting, I mean, I've been a hairstylist for 17 years and I think I have, a sense of humor, obviously, and a funny side to me. And I was like, which a lot of people really don't, I think, get to see. And I was like, what would be really funny one day is, just writing a book about other people's hair and talking about like all the crazy things that I've experienced with clients over the almost 20 years that I've been a stylist. And then I like wrote it all down in like one night. And then I was like, I am not going to do this. I'm not going to write a book. I just know myself. It's not going to happen for so many reasons. And so, I just kind of left it at that. But I always liked the name Other People's Hair. And I knew that it would come back into my life at some point. And I didn't tell many people about it. And then I told you.
Yeah, I mean, that conversation was a long time coming. We met 5 years ago on Instagram. I saw Dress Code Project and I flipped my shit and I just wanted to be friends. And then you moved here to Toronto. You moved from Toronto to New York, and now we're friends in the meat space.
Yeah.
In the daylight.
In IRL.
In IRL,
Yeah.
And just sharing a lot of our stories and similarities right around trying to create gender affirming spaces in our entire industry, right? And what does that look like? And where are similarities, and what are our goals, and also just funny stories about clients and being a boss and owning shops and salons, Zoom, and then this podcast came up. So I'm glad we're doing this. This is so exciting.
Same here. Yeah, it's super fun. And I think, you know, being almost in a sense like really some two humans that decided that we were just singular people, but we could do something. You know, we could do something to make a difference in our industry. And I think you and I have talked about this before. I know you were, you know, we're hair activists, really, essentially, right? And you're one of the only ones doing this, like in our industry. You know?
Yeah, well, when I moved to Brooklyn 7 years ago, yeah, nobody was really even sugaring in Brooklyn, let alone um, thinking about accessibility needs in Brazilians, right? Because a lot of these shops, a lot of these chains are they're like women only, but then they're excluding trans women, or they're saying, you know, vaginas only, but then they're not making trans masks or trans men feel welcome. It's just like it's a lot of bullshit, and a lot of people that can't actually enter spaces, right? So when we're talking about accessibility with Brazilians, we're really just saying, can you just give someone money in exchange for a Brazilian? Is that even a possibility in some of these shops? And the answer is no. And so that's where I found my calling.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think, you know, I get a question a lot in the salon where it's like, "Oh, like, I didn't even," or is it a question? It's a comment. It's kind of a question comment, I guess, like, where people just say to me, like, "I didn't even realize this was a thing," you know? And that makes perfect sense because, like, I love my job, I love my industry, but there's a lot about it that needs to change, especially when it comes to the queer community. Or, like, for example, in another issue is textured hair. It's very similar to what we face within the queer community and, you know, identity and stuff like that. And, you know, of course, if you don't face these issues, you're not really going to think about them. But these issues are huge, you know, like one of the reasons I started the Dress Code Project was because there wasn't space for folks that identified outside of the gender, you know, normative gender. And, you know, if you were not identifying as male or female
Mhm.
in the salon space, you couldn't find a haircut that was on a menu, you know?
Mhm.
So that's not inclusive at all. And so, you know, we've worked to take those things away to make it inclusive for everyone. And these stories are really relevant. And these are some of the stories that we're really going to get into with guests and things like that as well, you know, which I think is
Yeah, I'm
going to be
excited
a
to have people on
lot of
the
fun.
show. Um,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, I think for I mean I'm a licensed cosmetologist, so I was cutting hair in school and learning about skin, you know, kind of doing in the States you can kind of like do like this overarching license. And so
Mm.
I did cut a lot of hair in Ohio, and it was wild. I mean, the 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 kind of white knuckling of length of hair equaling someone's femininity. And if you took too much, if you took this much off instead of this much, it was as if you had cut someone's entire womanness off. You know, you might cut off her tits. Like she would just be so,
Yeah.
you know, you know, affected. um
Yeah.
I felt really sad about that. I was like, and some of the other things that, you know, that have kind of come with, I don't know, recent stuff. Because you know, long hair on men is like not a weird thing, and gendering
No.
does get kind of weird. So just in
Yeah.
haircuts, I was noticing that in school. And then I was like, oh, we're talking about length a lot with haircuts, but with Brazilians, you know, you're talking about genitals, which is an even more it's so precarious to try to explain to people that your genitals don't equal your gender.
Yeah. It
Um,
seems a lot more sensitive.
yeah, I think people are I think people are a little
Mm.
less married to length being, you know, the marker of their gender, and a little more married to their genitals being the marker of gender.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know if you know this, Kristen, but I got my cosmetology license. So I didn't get my esthetician's license. I didn't just focus on skin. I actually was cutting hair in school in the States. I don't know if they do this in Toronto, but in the States you can get this overarching license, cosmetology license, and in most states it'll let you do everything, including nails.
Mm. Oh,
Um,
interesting. I don't know if they do that in Toronto or in Canada in general, but I think it might be separate. Yeah.
yeah, and in some states here it is too, but in New York it's all under one umbrella. But yeah, I was cutting a lot of hair. I was getting my license in Ohio, and there was a lot of, you know, cis girls go into the local college with hair down to their butts, and, you know, and they were just like, cut this much off. And if I accidentally cut that, it was like I cut off their tits. It was like that I had taken their womanhood from them. And that
Yeah.
was a really hard dynamic to navigate, as I was starting to realize I was non-binary, and that gender, you know, either way was hard, you know, for me. So, um, And then, and so, with length and gender, and then getting into Brazilians where your genitals are, people really do connect genitals and gender. So trying to pull, that mentality apart and rewire that is a challenge.
Yeah, it really is. And, I think, I always say that we deal with the hair, like as a hairstylist, I deal with the hair that's on top of your head, not anywhere else, right?
Mhm.
And you now kind of do the opposite of what I do, right? But we're still doing it in a way that we're both making spaces for everyone, regardless of how they identify, you know?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think what's important. And I think that, in the last 5 years, this has become a thing in our industry, and more people are catching on and doing the exact same thing that we are. And I think, we've had this conversation where we all need to support each other, especially in our own community, and work together to kind of make this the norm and make this the message that, inclusivity is the way salons and any kind of salon is moving towards, and we're all kind of just looking for that.
Mhm.
Um, because it's ridiculous otherwise. Like it really is just kind of crazy to me, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Aw, look at us.
Yeah. I know.
Um, I I have some questions. I have a couple questions for you.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, first, I know you said before you've been in this industry for a really long time, but you've also just like had this overarching career. You have owned salons. You've had technicians. You have owned salons in both Canada and the United States. Like, and you have this really kind of long history in the industry. Um, and we both know that this industry is very kind of niche, right? It's very focused on thin, white, cis, wealthy women, able-bodied,
Mhm.
right? And
Mhm. Mhm.
even in cosmetology school, I don't know if this is the same in Canada, but here it's like you just learn about white hair, and and it's
Oh, yeah.
it's like incredibly niche. And if you want to learn about highly textured hair, natural hair, they're like, oh, that's specialized. You'll learn that later in a special place.
Yeah.
Um, so
And
it's
you'll pay for it on your own.
and you'll pay for that on your, yeah. They would
Get
in
more
my school.
education on your own. Yeah.
Like, it's like learning ombre. I go, no, it's not. It's like learning balayage. You'll just have to learn
Mm.
those skills and techniques later. That's extra.
It's actually not.
It's
Yeah.
adorable.
Yeah, that's cute and not shocking. Yeah. Yeah.
So if I were Adam Savage and you were Jamie Heineman of MythBusters, what myths here in the hair industry would you bust?
Well, I think the very first one and the most obvious one would be that hair has no gender, and as a result, we should not put, uh, haircuts on our menu boards that say men's cuts and women's cuts, because there's a whole bunch of wrong with all of that. So that would be number 1. I think after that, the one that I really need people to hear me when I say this. Do not come to your appointment with dirty hair if you're getting a color service. That is not helpful, and I know that you think it is, and it's
I
really
didn't
sweet
know
and
that.
cute. Yeah, yeah. And I think, it's really cute too because, like, I'll get people that sit in my chair or hear my stylist talking and stuff like that, and I'll hear them say, I'll hear someone go, "Oh my god, like, I haven't washed my hair in 3 days,"
The
and
color's
they're
gonna
so
stick
proud
really
of
well. Yeah.
themselves. Yeah, and it's so sweet. And you're just like, "Oh," and you feel bad. You're like, "Oh, this is a myth." So this is a major myth that needs to be busted. It is actually better to have clean hair. That way we can get in and do the work that we need to do, and there's nothing blocking it, you know? So
No.
that is a number 1 myth. And
Okay.
Nat, if I were to turn this around and ask you a myth about your industry and what you're doing in body curation and sculpting, what would be like a big one for you?
The first one would be that uh, when we're talking about removing hair, using words like "now I'm clean," we're going to clean this up as if hair is dirty. I think
Mm,
it's a big one. So that there's a big myth around, or it's okay for some people to have body hair and it's not okay for other people. I know as a fat person, um, body hair is often seen as dirty on fat people.
mm,
Um, a lot of my clients walk in the door in specific identity markers where
mhm.
even just self-imposed, feelings of like, oh, we got to clean this up. This is disgusting, and And yet there are some people, certain identity markers that can walk in and it's like, oh my God, you have the cutest armpit hair. So how do we?
Right. I was just about to say that one, like, because like to your point, for non-binary and gender non-conforming folks, having underarm hair and leg hair is totally normal. There you
Ow.
go. There you
She's
go.
light though.
Yeah.
Very light.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. But it is, right? But I see what you're saying, like
yeah.
about how because of how society has been set up under the gender normative, structure, it really is if were not born cis male, you shouldn't there's still a big notion that
Yeah.
you should not have underarm hair. You should not have leg hair.
And that's recent. That's not
Mm.
like that's not throughout time, right? Like that's very recent. As a matter of fact, I love Alok. They have lots and lots of um, Alok has lots of information around the history of hair removal, how how it's attached to colonialism, how it's attached to racism. So very good information there for busting that myth. Um, and
Yeah, exactly.
I went to the wing a long time ago. A friend took me for a panel that fur oil. Have you heard of fur oil? They like make an oil that's like you use on the hair that you keep. And the idea is,
Oh.
okay, so we don't have to take everything off. Maybe the Brazilian is not a full dolphin. Maybe you're not going to be a glazed donut. Here's some oil to treat the hair that you're going to keep, right? I'm a big
Hmm.
advocate of this. I do love oil for bodies and body hair. And they did a panel on the taboos of body hair. And I remember asking at that panel, I was like, how, like why are none of your models fat? Why are none of them black? Why are none of them
Hmm.
queer? And then like the next week, it was like fur oil had an overhaul,
Oh, that's
and
funny.
it was really nice. Yeah, well, they listen, and also, the idea that some people can grow hair and other people can't is, it's very deep, and it's
Yeah. Oh,
important to
yeah.
pack it.
Yeah, yeah, and we'll get into all of that in our upcoming
Yeah.
episodes.
Yes,
Yeah.
indeed.
Now, if we were okay, so we basically know that I think we'd be pretty good nerdy myth busters about our industry.
Yeah.
But when you and I talked about doing this, we sent each other some questions. They were sort of these like get to know each other questions and allow
Yes.
our audience to get to know a little bit about us. And
Yes.
so I have a question for you from that list of questions.
Great.
What is Uncle Nat's and how did you come up with this name? And then, of course, make it your business name.
Oh, my so when I started this shop 7 years ago, it was called Sugaring Brooklyn because SEO, right? Everyone's going to be putting in sugaring and Brooklyn. Everybody does that. It's sugaring and then whatever city you're in, you know. Um, and I did that. Just I didn't want to sit on the name. You know me, I hate naming shit. So
Mm,
just wanted to get started and figure out what this shop would be about. And then I would say about 2 or 3 years in, I knew that the name needed to change because we had people, something about the name Sugaring Brooklyn. I don't think it wasn't a nod to queer community. It wasn't a nod to anyone. It didn't really say what I did here. And there were some people showing up that really didn't need what I do. And there were some people that were actually not, they were harmful to the space and to the people that come here. And so one day I was like, we just need to call this place like Fat Queer Sugar, or the fattest, queerest sugaring shop in Brooklyn. And then these motherfuckers won't come, you know, like only the right people will show up, right?
it totally makes me feel like I'm gonna walk in there and see Seymour in Little Shop of Horrors, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where's
Um,
Jinx?
yeah. So yeah, I struggled with the name, and then one day, one of my nibblings. I'm an uncle to 8 nibblings. My brother and my sister had 4 kids each, and the eldest was like, "Hey, I noticed that you put they them pronouns on your Instagram. Should we keep calling you Aunt Natty?" And I was like, "Absolutely not. Call me Uncle Nat. I'm not transmasculine, but at least it will stop people for a minute, make them pause, and consider my gender for a hot sec." And so ever since then, all of my nibblings call me Uncle Nat, and I changed the name to it because one of my clients, Tourmaline, one day was like, "Why are you suppressing your Leo nature? You should just call this place your name. Like we're coming to see you." Um, and so that all happened around the same time, and I just called it Uncle Nat's because that's
I
me.
love that. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's perfect.
um, So, I'm obsessed with Dress Code Project. I love, I think people that work on directories are doing the Lord's work. Like, it is so hard as a fat trans disabled person for me to find any salons. I have no idea where my allies are. I don't know if places are actually accessible or not for me. And here you are creating a directory to help me find haircuts that help me express my gender, which is a very big deal. Um, because the man and woman thing, that's one thing, but when you are non-binary and you are trying to divorce yourself from gender,
Mhm.
like I am, that's the way that I do my
Mhm.
non-binariness. I'm divorcing myself from gender. That's a whole third category of haircut that's even harder to find.
Yeah.
um and I think that you do amazing work at Dress Code Project. I think it's incredible. So
Thank you.
um if you were the next incarnation of Doctor Who, and I invited you into my TARDIS to bend time and space, what is your miracle dream that transcends time and space for the Dress Code Project?
I think I get a similar question that is less specific to really amazing uh TV show slash fantasy worlds, but I love it being put this way. Um like what would I, what
What's
is
your
my
miracle?
goal? Right. What's my
Yeah.
goal for Dress Code Project?
Yeah.
If I could go back in time, what would I change? I think that my goal for the Dress Code Project is that we don't have to do it anymore, really, which I know sounds super weird as a business
No.
owner, but that it's that we're not needed anymore. One of the things that we do when we create this directory that you're talking about is we vet everyone, so we're not just throwing people on a directory to say that we have the largest directory out there. There are definitely more directories than just us now, even though we were the first, and I'm glad for that.
Mhm.
But we do vet ours because we just want to have that kind of accountability with people. And of course, we always know nothing can be perfect, but we do the best that we can
Mhm.
to make it feel comfortable and inclusive for everybody. And then if I were traveling time with you, um, I think that I would definitely, probably go way back and be like, "Okay, let's get rid of those no shirts, no shorts, no socks thing, like, take it out of there, please. That's so ridiculous."
Mm.
And then, like, let's just get rid of the hair menus in the first place, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
let's just divorce ourselves completely. Society never heard of men's and women's haircuts. It was just
Mm.
like, "Oh, if you have hair, come on in here and get it cut."
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, why not, right? I mean, it's again, like it's just so crazy to think that, it started out with like, oh yeah, like we know that this is like, as people say, the pink tax, like we're just going to be able to charge people who identify as women for more, right? But and then it turned into this whole thing where it's like, oh no, it's just like exclusive for so many other reasons. So I think it would definitely be going way back there and just yanking that from history
To
and
not
throwing
be
it in the big, as you Americans like to say, trash can.
the big trash can. I love
Yeah.
that. To never be needed. I love
Never
that.
never never heard of, never
Yeah.
existed.
Yeah. Um, you said earlier that you've been cutting hair for 17 years.
Mhm.
That is amazing.
So long.
Um, that's amazing. Um, do you like the term gender affirming? Do you prefer non-gendered, gender free? Like, I don't know. I feel like a lot of people right now are getting stuck on terminology, especially people in our industry that are trying to, I don't know, like be the best, the most accessible, the one ring to rule them all, best, most accessible, better than you, accessible,
Precious.
salon
Yeah.
space, safer, everything. What?
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about terminology with you because I know you
Mhm,
have the
mhm.
Gender Free Haircut Club that has a tour of the
Yeah.
fucking country. You're like a rock
Mhm,
star. Um,
mhm.
so talk to me about terminologies. How do
For
you feel?
sure. Yeah, so we terminology, man. People get so stuck on it. And like you said, in our community, people really get stuck on it, you know?
Mhm.
It's so funny because so many people in our community don't want to label themselves, and that's where genderless came from. Like fluidity. Like so many people use the word fluidity these days.
Yeah.
And yet, here we are saying that we are trans and non-binary, this, that, and the other. So all
Hmm.
we're doing is labeling ourselves and almost taking the fluidity out of it because we are creating all of these like boxes, you know? And here's how I look at it. Do you, boo? I don't give a fuck. You know, whatever works for you is what works for you, and that is okay. You
Hmm.
know, and what works for you may not work for someone else. But where I get stuck and where I get really worked up is don't police someone about it, you know? If
Yeah, it's like the
someone
dogma of it all. It's
yeah, like
that's
if
the
some
dogma is the problem, right?
yeah, if somebody is doing it this way, especially if their plight is the same as yours, let them fucking do it that way. And then why don't you just come on over and do it your way? And then guess what? There's more of us doing it in different ways, but we're all still doing it for the same cause. And then what is that strength in numbers beauty thing happens? And you know, and everybody's happy. But I think what is happening in our community again that I notice because obviously I'm in this community, it's the one I pay most attention to is that competition. Like I have to put you down to raise myself up, and that's not the case. We can continue to raise each other up and support each other by doing things together even if we're doing them differently, right?
Yeah, totally. I don't believe in 100% accessibility at all. And I don't
Yeah,
believe
agreed.
that, and I think that even if somebody is flexing a very small muscle to try to just be more available to a certain community in their neighborhood, like when I coach people, not every salon wants to be, gender affirming, fat glorifying, trauma disability aware. Like that's a lot. And so some
Yeah.
people just come to me and they're just like, I just want to learn one. I just want to
Yeah.
be here for fat people. Let's just start with that. And I'm not
Yeah.
here like being like, none of us are free until we're all free, bitch. I'm not gonna say that. I'm gonna be like, I, yeah, one step at a time, babe. Like we're all just
Yeah.
in community together, trying to like,
That's it, you know? And all of us that are doing this work, we're all doing it for the same reason, which is making it more accessible. So the very fact that some of us think that we have to say to other people, well, you're not doing it the right way, or you're not doing it well enough, or the way that you did it wasn't good enough for the way that it needs to be done now, like it's just crazy to me. You know, like I think there is a real thing in our community about elders, right?
oh,
And respecting what they've done. And the reason that you
yeah,
and I are here today being able to do this is because of what elders did for us, right? And
absolutely,
all of the elders. And they all did it differently too. That's the thing. They didn't
right?
have a script or a format, and they didn't send it to each other via carrier pigeon and say, okay, everyone, you must do it this way. Everyone
Yeah,
is doing it all differently, but it's all good. It's all good work, you know,
yeah,
and you know, we have enough people putting us down, right? We have enough people, especially right now, because again, what you know, hair is activism, and activism is politicalness. And you know, we have so much going on from outside community, you know, right now where people are literally trying to put bans on our existence.
literally
So
that.
don't fucking do it to each other. Like
Yeah,
just
yeah,
fucking stop
yeah.
it. Support each other, you know?
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of like police mentality. You'll have like people with a cab, tattooed on their knuckles, and then they're policing the way that we're talking about accessibility or
Yeah.
disrupting this industry as if you know there's only one way to do it. And
Yeah.
but I personally feel like terminologies like intersect, like I'm intersex because of my relationship with PCOS. I am trans non-binary because I'm in a place right now where I'm divorcing myself from gender, period, and also sometimes wondering if I'm gender. So I feel like they can, it can be the communication that we need to get a haircut or to get the body hair look that we want right now. It's
Mhm.
our terminologies change, our identity markers can change, our and I think that the more language the better. And so
Yep.
instead of finding a new word and then shitting on the last word, it's like I love safer salon spaces. Obviously we went from safe to safer, right? Because we're just trying to do harm reduction here. We're not trying to be perfectionists. We're trying to just be in the real world here. We're not ideologists. We're actually boots on the ground trying to help people get, get the
Yeah.
care that they need. And there's
Yeah.
no perfect way to do that. And we need as many systems and languages and scripts and terminologies as there are people, because everybody has different needs. I sometimes feel like at Uncle Nat's, I'm a referee. I could have 3 disabled people in the lobby that need literally opposing things, and I have to decide whose needs I can meet right now. And
Because
I
they all
know
have different
they
abilities.
all have different needs, and I
Yeah.
might not be able to do all 3 because they might be opposing.
Yeah,
And that's also
exactly.
where we come into like monolith stuff we can talk about later. But so I don't know. I know that you use Gender Free Haircut Club, and I love that. And
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, yeah, and the Gender Free Haircut Club, what it was like, I birthed that out of the idea that I wanted to make sure that everybody could get a haircut that made them feel affirmed. And I think the reality of the situation as we know it in both of our industries is that not everybody, for whatever reason, has accessibility to come into a salon space or a hair curating space like yours and get what they need done. So for what we were doing, I was like, oh, let's make this an event and let's make it fun and let's make it a celebration and community, and hopefully those aspects of the event can take away the seriousness of what we're doing and the anxiety inducing feelings that does come with it for folks who are doing this for the first time, and let's like make a celebration within our community. And so that's when we created the Gender Free Haircut Club. And we this past year took it on the first Gender Free Haircut Club hair tour. We were trying to make it like a little band tour, and we made
Yes.
t-shirts and we listed everywhere we went, and we went to a lot of cities in states where a lot of these trans bands are being introduced and trying to be passed. And
So
so,
amazing.
yeah, it was really awesome. And we are going to be doing it again. We had a really amazing response. And then when we were like, hey, we put it out on our social, who would like to do a Gender Free Haircut Club in your salon? We had like something like 70 places reply. So, now we're just going to be looking at that and, and seeing how that goes. So it should be a lot of fun, and I'm super excited for it. And honestly, this has become a big focus of ours, and I really love it because it's really great to get people out and see the community being able to get serviced.
And I'm going to be
Yeah.
at one of these, aren't I?
Yes, you are. Yeah. So I mean, which segues me into a few other things that we can talk about, which is going to be about, well, first of all, we do have our June 21st event coming up. It's going to be at the Hex House in Brooklyn. We're going to be there from 12 to 5. We're going to be doing a Gender Free Haircut Club, and you're going to be there doing a little bit of sugaring, right?
Yes. Yeah, I'm going to be sugaring like pits and knuckles and mustachios and eyebrows
Yeah.
or whatever. I don't know. We're going to
It's going to be
curate some,
so
yeah,
fun.
make some shake.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm excited.
So, I think that brings us to a point in our podcast where we can kind of give the audience a little like insight into what it is that we're going to be doing. And like, one of the things we're going to be doing is talking to guests, and a big focus of other people's hair is that we are going to be talking to guests about their own hair and their hair experiences. Maybe some experiences they had in salons that weren't so great. And then when they did transition over into getting that, gender affirming haircut or the gender affirming body curation when it comes to hair or shaping or removal, whatever the case is. And that's going to be really fun. I'm super excited to have people on the show with us.
Yeah. And you cut my hair yesterday, and we made a few fun videos if people want to
We
check
did.
that out on Instagram. If you want to go to, you can find this on other people's hair dot podcast on Instagram. It's also on Uncle Nat's, and it's also on the Dress Code Project. Um, and so yeah, that was so much fun. I love it when you
That
cut
was
my
so much
hair. You
fun.
have the
Thank
best
you.
consultations. You talk about hair like an architect. I wanted to look like a 1970s tennis player, and you fucking brought it. So
Yeah, you're going to be at the US Open this year. I can see it.
I are indeed.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. You're gonna be channeling some John McEnroe
Yeah.
spirit stuff right there. Um, I think another exciting thing about our show, exciting for us, and then of course it'll be exciting for our guests as well, is that we do have a really amazing producer who I also met, who's from Toronto, who I met because I was cutting her hair. Her name is Grace, the producer, and Grace
Oh,
is going to be
hi.
working with us and helping us curate this whole entire thing. And here she comes to say
Yes.
hello.
I'll
Hey,
pop in every
Grace.
once in a while. Hi.
Hi,
Yeah.
gorgeous.
Yeah. Yeah, we actually, I think I first met you, Kristen, at a gender-free haircut club. I believe that's correct. And then started to just like then actually book you as my stylist. So yeah.
Yeah, and like I think what did I cut your hair for like probably 5 or 6 years maybe.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I remember this one time talking to you, and just in terms of like, I'd come out as trans and then found Gender Free Haircut Club and went and was like very excited to get my hair styled in a way, and then was seeing you, and there was a moment where I like had been letting my hair grow out, and I was at this moment of like, do I want to keep letting my hair grow out, or is this like how I like it? And I remember you saying one time, I was like, I think I want to like trim it and like not have it grow out, and you said, do you want to trim it because that's the style you prefer, or because you don't know how to care for a long, and you didn't say it exactly like that. I think, and I had alluded to this, that like I have brothers. I only like, I don't know how to care for long hair. And you were like, so whichever one you want to do is fine, but we should do the one you actually want to do. And I remember that being so important in terms of my hair journey,
Mm.
which is figuring out whether I want, and I feel like I've kept my hair medium length. And today I went in
Mhm.
to get my hair cut and I was like, I think I want to try and grow it out again. So,
Oh,
we're always
yay,
evolving and
fun.
yeah,
Yeah.
figuring things out.
Well,
So
I
yeah.
love that you said that actually, Grace, because that is a huge part of having a genderless or gender affirming hair consultation. And consultation, as you mentioned, Nat, it's just so important.
Mhm.
And, one of the things that I've come to understand about being a queer person, being someone who's always struggled with and then been fluid in their identities, and my identity, I feel like is ever changing, is the fact that you were brought up a certain way, right? Because of the sex organs that you were born with. And if that is the case, as you alluded to, Grace, you had 2 brothers, right?
I have three
So
brothers. Yeah.
3 brothers,
Yeah.
sorry.
It's
So you
very
were
masculine energy. Yeah.
right, and you
Yeah.
were probably all brought up to learn how to do that hair, right?
Oh, it's a little
So
short on the side, trim the sides, a little long on top, and we're good.
yeah, and, like, this is how I style it, put a little bit of
Yeah.
paste in it and and get going. So, for me, I was like, when I was putting together the guide that I now give to hairstylists in their salons, I was like, "Okay, what we have to understand as hairstylists is that anyone who, did grow up this way and is now going through their journey may need to understand hair in a very different way." So, what we have to talk about is, like, however you wanna do your hair, it's totally great, but you just have to let me know how you wanna do it so that I can help you understand how you can do it, what
Mhm.
products you need, what tools you need. Is it going to be high maintenance or low maintenance and all of those things? Because you
Awesome.
were not brought up to understand that, right?
Yeah.
So
Not know how to care for long hair. Yeah.
yeah, it's such a huge,
It's similar. It's also similar with Brazilians. I think a lot of people come in and they're just like, take it all because that's all that anyone has ever offered
Mm.
me, and no one has ever been like, do you want a heart? Do you want a star? Do you want a thunderbolt? What do you like? What shapes do you want? And then, or some people are like, this is going to hurt so much. Just leave a bunch of hair, and I'll be like, well, in the shaping of hair, it could be more painful. So, yeah, we do like the consultation is kind of getting to the heart of, what are the actual heart's desires of our clients without them having to micro, right? Like we join forces, their wants and our knowledge.
oh yeah, 100%. And you just work it from there, and that is what Grace and I did every time Grace came in to get her hair cut. And then of course, like everything evolved. And there was a moment there, I think for about a year or so, where before I did move to New York, where I am now, Grace
How
would
dare
always
you,
be
by the way?
like, but I left you in
They're
the best
mine.
Yeah.
hands.
True.
Oh,
I left you
sorry.
in the best
You
hands.
did.
I mean,
You did.
Kyle.
Yeah. My friend
I
Yeah.
Kyle.
am sad that, yeah, I'm sad we're not hanging out with Grace right now. I gotta say.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, but we get to do this, which is
Yeah.
That's
just,
right.
it really is fantastic.
Yeah.
But like Grace really got into podcasting and stuff, and every once in a while, throughout
Yeah.
a portion of our hour together, Grace would be like, "So, like, there's that option to do a podcast."
Yeah.
Great.
Well, I podcast and I started in 2020. Started on Rob as a podcast, a reality show network thing, and started doing more with scripted TV content. I have a new podcast coming out on Rob as a podcast about scripted TV soon. But I podcast a lot and immediately was like fell in love with wanting to know everything about podcasting. So how to edit, how to upload, how to design a podcast, how the podcast should be formatted and function. And so I feel like I'm very excited to like actually not be in a mostly like on screen role here, is to basically sit in the background and lurk while you two have very interesting conversations
love
with very
that.
interesting people. I'm actually like super excited. And I think what like the two of you are doing, it's I'm like super excited. I'm going to ask you basically after many podcasts to be like, because I feel like I've never figured out eyebrows is like my thing. I feel like I still have not like figured out after however many years I've come out.
Oh,
So like I'm
well,
just so
you
excited.
are
I
with
know.
the right human being
Or with the
here.
right.
I know, but and then
Yeah.
just the knowing the work that you two do, and then knowing who else might be in your periphery and who you're going to interview in the
Yeah.
series already, who I know you're interviewing next week. I think like I'm super
Yeah.
excited for this podcast for people to get to hear. And I'm not like a hair professional. I work for a nonprofit, so I feel like I have some like affinity for what Dress Code Project does. But I'm excited as like someone who just has hair to listen into these conversations because I think it'll be very interesting.
Yeah, and speaking of, I'm super excited about our guest next week on our podcast. We're going to be speaking with Kathy Renna. Kathy is a longtime LGBT media activist and communications public relations guru at the task force and also at the company that Kathy co-founded called Target Q. And I reached out to Kathy and I was like, "Hey, Kathy, like, you're amazing. You're a legend. We need to talk to you about your hair and we really want you on our podcast." And, Kathy responded and was like, "Oh my God, I have a great hair story for you." So I'm just really
Wow.
excited about that. Yeah.
Look at this. You're learning already. That's called the tease, Kristin. That's how you do
Oh,
it.
Woo!
Yeah.
there you go.
Grace the
Yeah.
producer.
All right.
Yeah. Grace the
Pearls.
producer, folks.
Yeah.
Grace the
Yeah.
producer. Giving pearls.
So, I mean, I kind of feel like that's our show, right?
That was
In
fun.
a 43-minute nutshell. That's our
Yeah.
show. Yeah. And so we're going to be coming back every week and we're going to be having interesting stories. We're going to be talking about some current things that we call a 2-minute meltdown that we just really want to have a chat about because we got a lot to say all the time. And we're going to be talking about other people's hair, on their head, on their body, experiences that we've had, experiences that other people have had. And we're really just going to, highlight all of this so that people start to talk about it in a more regular and normal way.
I think also it's important to maybe say that this is a podcast for professionals and for clients, for people that are in the industry and also people that are just trying to navigate this industry. So, I hope that professionals out there are watching so that they, can understand what harm reduction looks like, but also like, I hope that this podcast is just entertaining for people that are trying to figure out how to get their hair cut and their Brazilians done.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. So lastly, once again, you can find us on otherpeopleshair.podcast on Instagram. You can find me at Kristin Rankin Hair and at the Dress Code Project on Instagram. Nat, where can we find you?
And I am uncle.nats, Nats, on Instagram as well.
Well, that's our show. Nat, this has been a blast. I can't wait to do more of this with you. Grace, the producer, we absolutely adore you and are so grateful for you. And we really can't wait to bring our show on next week. And thank you all for listening.
This is Other People's Hair.